Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. I'm your host, Joe Hamilton, along with Scott Tobin. Scott, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. You know why? Baseball starts for real tomorrow. I'm so excited. I've been literally been watching the MLB Network all day because I'm so geeked for the start of opening day. Is that bad?
No. A lot of baseball fans are doing that. I've watched a lot of stuff today as well. So I'm ready, man. I'm looking forward to seeing baseball start. I can't wait to see Nolan Arenado take the field for the first time for real in that gray Cardinal jersey and see him step into the batter's box in that first inning tomorrow. That's going to be an awesome thing.
Yeah, it really is. And, tonight ends our predictions. And first, I want to go into the American League Central. And I want to start with a team up in Minnesota, the Minnesota Twins. We know all too well about the Bomba squad, how many home runs they can hit. Great regular season team, Scott, but they can never make it in the postseason. When was the last time they've won a game in the postseason?
The last time they didn't play the Yankees in a series, they keep running into the Yankees, unfortunately, in that first round of the playoffs, and I think the Yankees have gotten into their heads a little bit because they haven't been able to get past them. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting season with Minnesota this year. What are your thoughts on the Twins?
The Twins are a team that can match with anyone. I like Jose Barrios in their rotation. They're just a team that's going to outscore people. I don't necessarily see any thing that'll overwhelm you in the rotation. While, like I said, Barrios is good. I mean, it's Barrios and then everybody else. But I guess you can get by when you hit that many home runs, right?
Well, Kenta Maeda is going to be Maeda is their number one. So yeah, him and Barrios, and then the rest of that rotation is okay. I mean, you got veterans like J.A. Happ and a guy like Matt Shoemaker that you're hoping bounces back. I think it's really going to hurt them that they did not re-sign Jake Odorizzi. I think that's going to come back and bite them as the season went along, because if you look what Odorizzi did in his time in Minnesota, he was really, really good.
Yeah, but the thing is, Scott, Jake Odorizzi has a injury history, and that's basically the reason why the Minnesota Twins kind of went away from that. But I at this point, Scott, I think it's a good idea for them to kind of move on from him, even though he was good for them.
Yeah, except again, they didn't really come up with a good replacement for him. I would much rather have Jake Odorizzi than J.A. Happ or Matt Shoemaker in my rotation.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. Now let's move on to the south side of Chicago, and that's the Chicago White Sox. The ever-loving favorite in this division. They got Tony La Russa as a manager. Hasn't managed there, I believe, since 1988. Something crazy like that. Or 86, whatever it was. The thing is, he's inheriting a young team. He's got a couple veterans sprinkled in there. I like their pitching. I like Lucas Giolito at the top. Scott, I'm going to talk about Giolito first. Do you think Giolito is ready to take that next step?
I do. I picked Lucas Giolito to be my American League Cy Young Award winner. So yeah, I think he's ready. I think he's going to be the guy for the White Sox, and I think this is going to be a big year.
You think this is going to be a big year? You got Luis Robert in the outfield. You do lose Eloy Jimenez, and that's always a tough blow. You still got Jose Abreu. And Scott, let's talk about Jose Abreu too, because this guy. Just talk about how important this guy is to that White Sox team.
Yeah, I mean, he's been there for a while. He's kind of a fixture in Chicago. His numbers have gone down a little bit the last couple of years. As he's gotten a little bit older, but he's still a mainstay. He's still kind of the anchor of that lineup. And then you've got a lot of really young, talented guys. You've got still Yoan Moncada and Luis Robert. And, Tim Anderson's a really good shortstop. They brought back Adam Eaton. So Yasmani Grandal's their catcher. They've got a good mix of veterans and young guys. I think they're going to be really good.
They're going to be really good, Scott. And I consider them my early favorite to win this division. I'm going to just put it out there now, but things can happen, and you can't have very many more injuries like the Eloy Jimenez injury. And Scott, I know we're talking about predictions here, but I've seen a lot of injuries to this point before the season's even started. What is that a product of to you?
I mean, we always see a lot of injuries in spring training before the season starts. You know, I don't know that there's any more than normal. I mean, it's always something that happens around baseball. So I haven't seen like a massive rash where I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody's hurt. I mean, there's injuries that happen in spring training every year. You know, it happens every single year.
It happens every single year, that's for sure. Now let's head over to Cleveland. The Cleveland Indians, they lost Francisco Lindor, and I don't know where this team is at this point. They still have good pitching. I like their lineup, but where do you see the Cleveland Indians?
They're still going to be a good team. They're going to be in the hunt for the wild card. I'm not sure that they get the wild card spot, but I definitely think they'll still be in the hunt for it. You know, they're definitely going to miss Frankie Lindor. They went and got Eddie Rosario to kind of add some more offense to that lineup. They still have Jose Ramirez in the middle of that lineup. And then you're going to count on some younger guys like Franmil Reyes and Josh Naylor, Jake Bowers to kind of hopefully step up and give you something to that lineup. And their rotation still has a couple of really nice pieces. You still got guys like Shane Bieber and Zach Plesac in that rotation at the top. So I think they're going to be – I mean, they're definitely going to take a step back after letting Carlos Carrasco and Francisco Lindor go. But I think they'll still be competitive in the division and in the wild card in the American League.
Is this kind of borrowed time for Cleveland because their owner seems to be cheap, and you could end up seeing a very different team come years to come? I mean, they have some young talent, but I think they're about to enter a rebuild in my mind. I mean, they still could be competitive this year, but I see them entering a rebuild.
But, you know, think about what the Indians have done over the last 30 years. I mean, they keep doing that. You know, they bring up young guys. I mean, you can go all the way back to the Albert Bells and the Manny Ramirez and the Jim Thomes when they came up in the 90s, and those Cleveland teams were really good. And then they rebuilt, and they came up with another set of guys, and they were really good. And then you moved into the Francisco Lindors and the Corey Klubers and those guys, and they were really good. And now they're rebuilding again. You know, they just keep trading guys, rebuilding, getting good prospects, drafting well, and they keep, you know, they may have a down year or two, but they come back with a huge farm system that lets them get right back in the hunt. So, I mean, Cleveland's done a really nice job since the early 90s of just constantly restocking that rotation and that lineup. And we've seen them do that again with the trades they've made over the last couple of years. They've gotten a ton in return, a lot of top prospects. They may have a down year or two, but they'll be right back in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and that's the way you want to rebuild, Scott. I don't like the tanking. I mean, Rob Manfred likes to talk about there isn't any tanking in baseball, but I mean, you definitely see some teams there like Baltimore, like maybe a Cleveland. Before Cleveland got Francisco Lindor and when they rose to prominence, they were a pretty bad team. And do you think tanking still exists, Scott?
It does. Although, like we said, Cleveland might have a couple of years, but for the last 30 years, they've been consistently right there over and over again. They may go through a couple of years where they rebuild, but they've never been like 10 or 15 years where they're bad recently. You know, I mean, you go back in old Indians history in the 70s and 80s, yeah, they were bad. But since then, they've had a constant run of, you know, 4 or 5 years of playoff runs, and then they might have a couple of down years, and then they're right back. But yeah, no, to go to your other point, yeah, tanking still exists. You know, we saw the Cubs do it a few years ago. We saw the Astros do it. And sometimes you can tank and get prospects and get back to the top right away. And sometimes it doesn't work. Take a look at the Pittsburgh Pirates, for example.
You have a point there, Scott. Now let's go to Kansas City. This is a team that's on the rise in my mind. I mean, it's a small rise, but they're on the rise. They have a very good young core. I do like Bobby Witt Jr., your AL Rookie of the Year pick. I like, Danny Duffy. I like that rotation. Mike Matheny at the helm. I would like to think he's learned a little bit, Scott.
Oh, I think he has. I think he's still learning. But he's got a young team to work with here. I mean, you talked about, You talked about Bobby Witt Jr. They've got some other pieces in that lineup you have to like. Hunter Dozier's a really good young player. Jorge Soler is a good player. And then, you got a guy at the top of that lineup that just hits as well as anybody in the American League in Whit Merrifield. And don't forget, they also went and got Andrew Benintendi, and they got Carlos Santana. So they've got a pretty solid lineup. Their pitching staff still has some issues, but I agree with you. They've got a really strong farm system. I think Mike Matheny and the Royals will be in the playoff hunt in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and it's great to see because Mike Matheny, good guy, just never got his feet under him here in St. Louis. Now, let's go to, in my mind, the last place team in this division, and that's the Detroit Tigers. There's nothing really to go on with this team. I mean, they're going to be rebuilding for a while. You still got your aging superstar locked up and Miguel Cabrera. He has 4 more years on that deal. I think about $90 million. What do you say about Detroit at this point?
Yeah, they're a team that's kind of in the crosshairs. You've got some young pieces coming in their minor league system, but right now they're just a team that's trying to hang in there until some of these young prospects are ready. And like you said, you've got a lineup that's got Miguel Cabrera, who's an aging superstar. They brought in guys like Jonathan Scope and Nomar Mazara, trying to just keep the team, afloat and score some runs until they can get some of these young guys. But it's going to be 2 or 3 years before at least before the Tigers are really competitive again. They don't have a whole lot in their rotation either. A guy like Matthew Boyd is still pretty solid at the top, but other than that, there's a lot of questions. So it's going to be a few years before the Tigers are really competitive again.
Scott, one guy you need to keep an eye on in terms of development is Casey Mize. He's one of their top prospects in their system, and he has a big arm.
Yeah, he does. He does, but it takes more than 1 or 2 guys. So
no, I get it, but
he's a name. He's definitely a name you need to keep your eye on. He's going to be good in the near future, but it's like I said, it's just a rebuilding process for the Tigers. So it's going to be a couple of years before fans in Detroit have a whole lot to be excited about again.
Yeah. So how do you have this division shaping up?
I went with the White Sox, the Twins, the Indians, the Royals, and the Tigers.
You know what? I'm right there along with you. I'd like to disagree with you, but that's pretty much where I see this division ending up. But that threshold between the White Sox and the Twins, that's going to be, I say by the end of the year, that's a 3-game separation.
Yeah, when I actually sat down and did that, when I actually figured it out, I have them in about 2 games. So we're right on the same train of thought there.
Well, how would you characterize this division as a whole, Scott? It's not terrible, but it's not great either. How would you characterize it? We have a little bit of time here.
It's a pretty competitive division. The White Sox, like we said, we think are going to be really good. The Twins should be really good. And then, the Indians are going to be decent. The Indians are going to be in the hunt for that wild card. And then the Royals are not bad. I mean, I think the Royals are going to be around 500. And then the Tigers are building. But the Tigers, we saw this last year, even though it was a 60-game sample size, the Tigers weren't an easy victory. I mean, they put up some tough fights, and they played really well against some tough teams last year. So I don't think this is going to be a walkover division. I think it's in the middle of the pack as far as strength of division overall.
I think so too. So we got to go to break, but coming up next here on Crunch Time, we're going to be talking about the NL Central. So keep it locked right here. Welcome back to Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. Right now, we're going to take a look at the NL Central, and this is a division that we know a lot about. I think I got a case of your tongue there, Scott. But no, this is a division that we both know very well. The team I want to look at first resides in Cincinnati, and this is a team that last year had a pretty good season. They went to the playoffs, and but they lost Trevor Bauer. I like their pitching otherwise. Their hitting core, I still have questions about Joey Votto. I think he's changed his, I guess, approach at the plate, so he's going to try to hit the ball out of the ballpark more, which was more of Joey Votto's game in my mind. But talk about the Reds.
There's a lot of questions about the Reds. I don't know what this team is. You said you like their pitching staff. Trevor Bauer's gone. They still have Luis Castillo, who's going to pitch opening day tomorrow. Sonny Gray, the other name in their rotation that everybody talks about, is injured. He's going to miss at least this first weekend. I'm not exactly sure when he'll be back. He's going to miss a start or two. And then the rest of their rotation is kind of iffy. I mean, Wade Miley is in that lineup. Tyler Mahle. It's an okay rotation. I'm not super excited about it. And then their lineup, they've got some names, but we thought they were going to hit really well last year, and they didn't. Nobody in that lineup hit last year. Mike Moustakas went over there, really struggled. Nicholas Castellanos was okay, but he wasn't great. Joey Votto was okay last year, didn't really do a whole lot. And Eugenio Suarez numbers were way down. And the thing you have to think about with this Reds team this year is this team is going to be really bad defensively. I mean, Mike Moustakas is back at third base. He's not the best defensive third baseman in the world. He's okay, but he's not great. They're moving Suarez from third base to shortstop. I'm not sure that that's the best idea. Castellanos in right field is not a very good defensive outfielder. Joey Votto is still pretty good at first base, but he's not great. Tucker Barnhart's an okay catcher. Jesse Winkler, he's okay, but they're not a really good defensive team. They got rid of their star closer, so there's going to be questions about their bullpen. There's questions about their rotation. Their defense shouldn't be very good. Like somebody said, I've heard a couple of people say this in the last couple of days. If you're a team going up against the Reds, you just tell your hitters, put the ball in play, because if you put the ball in play, something good's going to happen, because most of these guys are not very good defensively. Even if you hit it right at them, they may not catch it. So, I mean, there's a lot of questions in Cincinnati in my mind.
You say that, and it kind of reminds me of when the Cubs were really bad. When the Cubs were really bad, they throw the ball all over the infield. Is that how this Reds team is going to look defensively?
I mean, it's possible. It's possible. There's nobody on that defense. I mean, Joey Votto is still a pretty solid first baseman. But other than that, you look at that defense and you're like, man, that's not great. And like we said, if they hit, great. They'll score some runs, especially in that little ballpark in Cincinnati. But for whatever reason, they couldn't hit last year. You talked about them getting to the playoffs last year. They didn't score a run in the playoffs. They got shut out in both games. So, I just don't really know what to make of the Reds, to be honest with you.
I have to agree with you, but Scott, you mentioned their defense, infield defense mostly. Well, what about their outfield besides Castellanos?
Yeah, that's what I said. Jesse Winkler, not the greatest outfielder either.
Okay.
Nick Senzel, he's okay. So, they're okay, but again, not anything you're going to write home about.
Yeah, that's for sure. So their meal ticket is definitely going to be scoring a lot of runs. Now let's go to the most talked about team in this division, and that's the Pittsburgh Pirates. This team is going to be really bad. Bad pitching. They have a few nice hitters in their lineup, but other than that, there's nothing really to be excited about in Pittsburgh.
No, it's going to be a tough year for Pittsburgh. They moved on from a lot of guys. There's no Josh Bell in the middle of their lineup. There's no Jameson Taillon in their rotation. They do have Steven Brault, who still does have some potential. He's shown some signs. Chad Cole's also shown some signs. So Mitch Keller has been decent. I mean, again, not household names, not anybody that you're going to expect a lot out of. But, the Pirates are the Pirates. We'll see what happens. Key Brian Hayes is definitely the guy to watch out for. That guy's probably one of the up-and-coming young stars in the National League. Again, though, what's he going to do? Because there's nobody really in that lineup to protect him at this point. So is anybody going to pitch to him?
Yeah, you got a good point there, Scott. And another guy I wanted to talk about was a guy like, Kevin Newman. Yeah, you did have Todd Frazier go back there, has signed a major league contract again, I believe. So who knows? Who knows? I mean, yes, this is going to be a last place team, but at this point, they got to excite their fans somehow, and maybe Key Brian Hayes is the guy to do it.
Yeah, I don't know that he's going to be enough to excite that Pirates fan base. We've seen that ballpark be really empty at times, and then in 2013, 2014, when the Pirates were good, and you had all of those guys, when you had Andrew McCutchen and Starling Marte and Gregory Polanco was coming up, and you had Garrett Cole, and it looked like you were building something in Pittsburgh. We saw the fan base really show up again. But then they've watched this team pretty much tear itself back down again, and there's just not a whole lot to be excited about. The other guy other than Hayes really in that lineup is Gregory Polanco, who has never really lived up to the hype. He was supposed to be the next big star in Pittsburgh, and he's never really gotten to the level that everybody expected him to. So it's going to be a rough year in Pittsburgh, I'm afraid. But Pirates fans have kind of gotten used to that for the most part over the last 25 years.
Well, and I've always asked my dad about why is that beautiful ballpark always empty? Number one, of course, the Pirates are bad. Number two, it's more of a football and hockey town. Would you agree with that?
Except when the Pirates are good, because like when we talked about, when the Pirates were good, that place was packed. And I mean, go back and look at what the Pirates did when they had in the 90s when they had Van Slyke and Bonds and those guys. That stadium that was Three Rivers, but it was always packed. And in the 70s, I mean, Pittsburgh's got a good baseball tradition. And, the fans will show up when they're good. They've just not been good for a long time. And so fans are not real excited to come out to see a bad product. And that happens in most cities except St. Louis. But that is a beautiful ballpark. I've been to a game there. It is really, really nice.
It is really nice. And I'm yet to go there, Scott, but that is on my list. That is for sure. Now let's go to the north side of Chicago. You got a team at the crossroads of competing and tearing it down. I mean, you have Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Javi Baez. You still haven't signed Javi Baez yet. In my mind, you insulted Anthony Rizzo with your last offer. Where are the Cubs right now?
The Cubs may be the most intriguing team in baseball this year. That may be the storyline to watch all year long. Because like you said, you've got Bryant, who's a free agent. Rizzo's going to be a free agent. Baez is going to be a free agent. We've heard for 2 years now that they've tried to trade Wilson Contreras. If the Cubs get off to a good start and are in contention at the trade deadline, then maybe Jed Hoyer goes out and adds a piece to make them better. If the Cubs are struggling at the trade deadline, I mean, you can see that whole team get torn down. You can see Contreras go. You can see Rizzo go. You can see Bryant go. You can see Jock Peterson go. You can see Kyle Hendricks go. I mean, this team could be really good, or it could be a Cubs team that you don't know who's on the field in September. So it's really going to be a storyline. And you look at that Cubs rotation, and you're just like, man, I don't know how anybody can have real high hopes for this. I mean, Kyle Hendricks is their best pitcher, and he got hurt last week running the bases. So they're not even sure he's going to be able to pitch tomorrow. It's going to be kind of a game-time decision whether Kyle Hendricks is even on the mound. They brought back Jake Arrieta, but he hasn't been the same guy since 2018. Zach Davies, we've seen what he does in Milwaukee. He's okay, but nothing to get excited about. And then Alec Mills and Albert Alzolay, really? I mean, they're guys, but nothing you're going to be writing home about. And the Cubs don't have a real good bullpen on top of that. It could get really ugly in Chicago.
Alzolay was one of their top prospects. I remember, MLB Number doing an MLB.com show, like top 50 prospects. At one point, I think it was 2017, they talked about him as being one of their top prospects. And so far, he hasn't really shown much at all. So it'll be interesting to see. They still have a prolific offense when you have that many guys. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Joe. They have a bunch of names, but that offense hasn't been very good the last couple of years.
Can you really blame it on them, or can you blame it on coaching? I mean,
I can blame it on them when you look at their numbers. I mean, coaches can only do so much. They can't make you go out there and hit. And I mean, you've seen what Wilson Contreras' numbers have gone down the last couple of years. Chris Bryant, I know he's been partially injured. His numbers have gone down. Javi Baez was awful last year. Jock Peterson's pretty much home run or nothing. I mean, Jason Hayward has not been good since the year he was in St. Louis. So, I mean, there's a bunch of names there, but the offense has struggled since the year they won the World Series.
It's funny because all we kept hearing after that World Series, Scott, was dynasty, dynasty, dynasty. And it's funny how things happen, right?
It is, and the Cubs are one of those teams that, they drafted really well, the Rizzos, the Bryants, the Baez, but they didn't take care of their pitching staff. They went out and signed free agent pitchers that were old. I mean, John Lester, they went and traded for Quintana, and that didn't really work out the way they wanted to. They went and got Darvish. That didn't really work out the way they thought it was going to. And they've added pieces to their bullpen. It hasn't worked. They haven't really developed pitching to go with that young hitting core. And now it may be what was supposed to be a dynasty may fizzle out as a one World Series team.
Yeah, and that certainly sucks, at least from a baseball fan point of view. As a Cardinal fan, I couldn't be happier. Now let's go over to...
I'm completely happy with them falling apart.
Yeah. Now let's go to the Milwaukee Brewers. And this is a team, Scott, it's not going to be a Chicago-style rivalry, but I think this is going to turn into one of the best rivalries since Cardinals-Cubs, at least since I've seen. I saw the Cardinals and Reds at their height, so this could be a good rivalry. They did pick up Colton Wong off of free agency. That, like I said, that's a Cardinal move. I don't understand why they didn't make, but they have Christian Yelich. Brandon Woodruff is your ace. And, Scott, I want to start there. Brandon Woodruff, is he really an ace?
He's a young guy who could be. He's a really talented pitcher. Again, he's one of those young guys that you're not exactly sure what he's going to be for a full season, but he's got tons of potential.
He's got tons of potential, but the thing is, potential isn't what you want to hear. You want to see results. That lineup, Scott, is pretty scary. I mean, you still have Lorenzo Cain. Even at his age, he's not bad at all. You have Christian Yelich. You have Colton Wong. I'm forgetting some of the guys in that lineup, and I shouldn't be because they have a pretty good hitting lineup, Scott. I went in since Nolan Arenado was traded to St. Louis. I go, yeah, this is going to clinch a division for the Cardinals easily. But then looking at the Brewers, this could be pretty fun.
It could be. If Christian Yelich bounces back and has a good year, if Lorenzo Cain bounces back and has a good year, Cain sat out last year. Can Keston Hiura do what he did last year? Can he keep that up? We'll see. They brought Travis Shaw back to be their third baseman. Can he recapture his former glory? Because he really struggled in Toronto. So we'll see. I mean, there are pieces there that could be really good, but there's a lot of questions there too. And like you talked about with their rotation, you got Woodruff and Corbin Burns and Hauser. They're really good young pitchers, and they've shown signs. But again, can they maintain that through a full season, 162-game season? That's a question we'll have to let it play out and see how it goes.
We will have to let it play out. Now, I was going to go to the Cardinals, but we're going to do that in our next segment. I'm going to break down, or at least talk about the pitching a little bit. So how do you see this division shaping up?
I've got the Cardinals winning it, then the Brewers, the Cubs, the Reds, and the Pirates.
I got the exact same 5 there. I mean, because this is a pretty self-explanatory division in my mind. So we'll see how it plays out. I mean, that's on paper. I mean, you have to play the game still. So, Scott, tell us what we got coming up in our next segment.
When we come back for our third segment, we're going to dive into the Cardinals. We're going to look at we're just going to break down the team and then really look at their pitching. So that's coming up next after this break right here in Crunch Time.
Welcome back to Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. Joe alongside Scott. Scott, it's time to get into the St. Louis Cardinals a little bit. We've been talking throughout this week about this team, but we haven't really dove into the pitching, so let's go ahead and do that. You have Jack Flaherty, which, again, if you heard the podcast earlier this week, I picked him as my NL Cy Young Award winner, not just because, I live in St. Louis, I'm a Cardinal fan. I just think this is a year he actually puts a full season together, and it's going to be dominant. And then you have Adam Wainwright, who just continues to learn how to pitch, and it's fun to watch, man. I mean, it takes a certain type of talent to pitch without velocity, and that's what Wainwright's done. But after that, you have three unknowns. So talk about that rotation, Scott.
You don't have three unknown. Carlos isn't an unknown. I mean, you're talking about a two-time All-Star. Yeah, has he had issues? Has he had a health issue and been in the bullpen the last couple of years? Yes. But Carlos Martinez is also, if you go back and look at his career as a starter and the years that he was a starting pitcher in the National League, his earned run average, his win-loss record, his strikeout rate, they're all top 10, top 12 in the National League when he was a starting pitcher. So to say that Carlos is an unknown, I know it's fun in St. Louis to bash him and say, oh, we don't know what we can count on in Carlos. I think Carlos Martinez is going to have a really good year, and I'm not the only one who thinks this. I know you've looked at me. I was listening to Dan McLaughlin, the voice of the Cardinals today, and I've said this a couple of times, and Danny Mac said it today. Carlos may be the guy who has the best stuff in this rotation. Yeah, that's right. Better than Jack Flaherty's. Carlos may be have the best stuff in this rotation.
But yet Jack Flaherty's your ace. So, I mean, I'm not arguing that because I know what Carlos can do. It's just a mind trick with him. He's either good or he's either bad. The thing is, Scott, when he gets something thrown his way, a non-positive thing, it seems to spiral. I want to see, because he is going to experience some adversity this year, one way or another. So I'd like to see what he can do with that adversity, if he can get out of those tough jams.
I think this is a different Carlos, and we've heard that from everybody that's been around him this year, that he's matured. Yadi talked about that, watching him in the Caribbean World Series, and I saw it the other day when I watched him pitch 6 innings. He was breezing through the first 3 or 4 innings, and then he got to about the 5th inning, and he walked a guy, and you watched him, and he was falling off to the first base side. He wasn't following through with his arm motion. And within about a batter and a half, he corrected that and got back on top of the mound, got himself straightened out and figured it out. That's something that a couple of years ago, Carlos Martinez might not have done. So I think Carlos has matured. Listening to him talk after games, spring training games, good or bad this season, he sounds like a guy who's matured, who understands what's expected of him and knows that, his future is kind of on the line right now, because the Cardinals have a $17 million option for him for next year, and then a $14 million option the year after that. So Carlos has to pitch really well, for his financial future as much as anything else. I mean, not that his career would be over if the Cardinals don't pick up those options by any means, but to have a secure future, he's kind of pitching for a secure financial future this year.
Yeah, that he is. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of start he gets off to. He is the number 3 man in this rotation. We'll get to the top 2 later. I just wanted to focus on these 3. Then you have Daniel Ponce de Leon, and he's had some control issues in the past, Scott. What kind of year can you expect out of Daniel Ponce de Leon?
Ponce is a guy who has unbelievable stuff. I mean, the thing that Daniel Ponce de Leon hasn't figured out yet is how to get through an inning quickly. I mean, you may see him throw 30 pitches in an inning, and he may strike out the side, but he also may walk 2 guys. He throws a lot of pitches. He's, as a starter, he's probably a 5-inning guy for the most part. But, I mean, he's got wipeout stuff. You see it. Guys can't hit him most of the time. When he gets into trouble, a lot of times it's because he loses control. If you remember his very first start, I mean, he had a no-hitter for 7 2/3 innings in his very first major league start. He's got that kind of stuff. He's just got to figure out how to harness it. And, whether Ponce is in the rotation all year or he's in the bullpen, because it sounds like at least KK's only a couple of starts away from being back in this rotation. So I think Ponce will be fine. either in the rotation or in the bullpen.
Daniel Ponce de Leon, I got to give him credit either way, Scott, because coming back from what he did, from the line drive off the head in the minor leagues, that's got to take a lot of guts. And have you read his book yet?
I haven't had a chance to read it yet. Yeah, I mean, nobody knew for sure Ponce was even going to live after that, much less come back and pitch in the major leagues. And he's a really neat guy. I've had a chance to talk to Daniel a couple of times. Couldn't be a more humble, more unassuming guy when you talk to him. So you just root for guys like that because he's an inspiration to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome in terms of you like athletes to be that way, kind of grounded, doesn't like the limelight that much, and that's something you like to see. Now, John Gant to me is a guy that is good for 5 innings. See, we have 2 out of those 3 guys are 5-inning guys. Can John Gant go more than 5 innings? Number one,
I think he can. I don't have any reason to think that he can't. 2 years ago when he was a starter, he started 19 games. He averaged almost 6 innings as a starter. I think it was 5 2/3, so almost a 6-inning guy. And anymore in baseball, the way it's played, whether you like it or not, especially for a guy who's a 3rd or 4th starter or 4th or 5th starter in this case, if you can get 6 innings out of him, most teams will be happy with that. Especially as deep as the Cardinals' bullpen is. Again, hopefully John Gant's not in the rotation all year because he's a nice bullpen piece as well. So you hope that Miles Michaelis is able to bounce back and be in that rotation by the end of May, which is kind of what the Cardinals are shooting for right now.
I would hope that's the case, Scott. Now let's go to the top 2, and I want to go to Adam Wainwright first. I mean, let's save the best for last, right? I mean, these 2 were the cream of the crop in this division or in this rotation in my mind. So Adam Wainwright seems to get better with age, Scott. I don't have any more superlatives to describe him, so you do it.
He's a warrior. I mean, that's how you put it. I mean, the guy's a professional. He's a warrior. He's a winner. I mean, look what all the stuff Adam Wainwright's been through in his career. I mean, he's been one of the best pitchers in the National League. He's been a Cy Young finalist, top 3 finalist 3 times in his career. He's missed 2 years with injuries. We thought he was done, 4 years ago? Everybody said, oh, Adam Wainwright's done. And then he figured it out. He figured out how to pitch without his fastball anymore. His fastball hits 88, 89 miles an hour, but he's figured out how to work that fastball. He's figured out how to turn his curveball into about 4 different pitches by changing the break on different pitchers, by changing the speed of different pitches. He's learned how to be a pitcher, and the great ones do that when they start to lose their stuff and they figure out how to just pitch, and that's what Adam Wainwright's done.
When the Cardinals first got Adam Wainwright, did you see this coming out of him? Did you see the guy he is today?
I mean, he was a pretty big prospect when the Cardinals went and got him. Everybody heard that name when they made that trade. I mean, when they made that trade, it was J.D. Drew and Eli Marrero to the Braves, and they got Jason Marquis and Ray King, and then some kid named Adam Wainwright that everybody said was a big prospect. And it's worked out well. He came in, and we saw it from the very beginning when he came into the bullpen in the end of 2005 and then in 2006 as he gets hurt, and he ends up being your closer through the World Series. And then, we've just seen what an amazing guy Adam Wainwright is, as well as, like I said, an amazing competitor. And he's a future Cardinal Hall of Famer and maybe a Major League Hall of Famer at some point.
The one thing, Scott, I wonder how hard that transition was. It'd be interesting to ask him this. What that transition was like from a reliever to starter.
Well, I mean, he was a starter originally. He was But, a lot of young guys do that when they first come up. To make it in the big leagues, they bring them up and they throw them in the bullpen. And, that's what Adam did to make it to the majors. And then, he got a shot to be a starter then again in 2007. And we've seen him be in the bullpen a couple of times since then, when he came back from his Achilles injury in 2015, which happened in April. And then somehow miraculously he was back and able to pitch again in September, which nobody thought that would happen. And he pitched in the playoffs, but he was in the bullpen. He's just a guy who is able to, kind of like John Smoltz was in his career, who's Adams' role model in a lot of ways. He's just willing to do and able to do whatever the team needs him to.
Yeah, and Adam Wainwright's been there for a long time, and he's just gotten better with age. Now, you talk about Jack Flaherty at the top. Flaherty, this is the year he needs to step up and become that ace and have a full season of dominance. Maybe not quite to the dominance he had in a half a season, but he needs to be that ace, Scott. What makes you say that he will? Because I think he will.
I think he's going to I think he's going to have a really good year. I mean, for people to ask him to do what he did in that half season in 2019, that's never going to happen again. I mean, the numbers that he was putting up were historic. They were Bob Gibson 68-esque numbers. Jack Flaherty's probably never going to do that again in his career. But can he be an ace and a really good pitcher and a Cy Young contender? Absolutely. He's got all the stuff. He's got the attitude. He's got the stuff. I think Jack Flaherty's going to have a really good year.
I think Jack Flaherty will have a great year as well. I picked him as my NL Cy Young Award winner. And that's saying a lot because there are a lot of great pitchers in the National League right now. So I hope I'm right, Scott, because I think the last time we did predictions, I think it was 2019. I mean, we did 2020, but legit predictions, I was wrong on almost all of them. So I'd like to be right on one.
Yeah, the one thing I will say, it's going to be tough for Jack Flaherty to win the Cy Young this year. And even if he has the credentials to do it, just because a lot of people aren't talking about him, if he's in the hunt, but you've also got a guy like Jacob deGrom or a guy like Trevor Bauer, those bigger names are probably going to win it. Flaherty needs a couple of years where he really puts up those kind of numbers to really, really have a real shot at winning it. That's just the way those major awards work.
Max Scherzer?
Scherzer could be there. And I've said this, I'm going to say this on the nightly show because I've said it on the podcast and I've said it everywhere else I've been. Max Scherzer's a guy, if the Nationals struggle at the trade deadline and the Cardinals need a starter, don't be shocked if the Cardinals call the Nationals and Max Scherzer comes home and makes a run for the postseason for the Redbirds.
I would love that. Scott, one more thing before we get out of here for our next segment. John Nagowski was on front of the show 101 ESPN's ESPN today, and he had the best attitude I think anyone could ever have. He goes, it's one thing to get there. It's one thing to start it. It's another to finish it, meaning winning a championship. That's an great attitude coming from a guy who's really been a career minor leaguer. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the attitude that everybody should have. And yeah, I heard the interview too. He seems like a really good guy. I hope John Nagowski has a good year. I think he's going to have some big hits for the Cardinals. I think he's going to play a major role off the bench for this team.
I think he will too. And coming up next here on Crunch Time, I'm gonna ask Scott one simple question. His biggest storylines heading into this 2021 season. That coming up right after this here on Crunch Time.
Hey Crunch Time fans, my name is Graham Forsyth. I'm the host of Coffee with Graham and the Prospect Show on ASTV Productions. On Coffee with Graham, I talk to athletes, coaches, and whoever else involved in the amateur sports scene in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And on the Prospect Show, I talk to the best young hockey prospects from around North America. You can catch all the coverage on ASTV Productions. You can catch Coffee with Graham on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. And for the Prospect Show, that show airs every Friday at 8 p.m. Central Time. Hope to see you there. Have a good one.
Welcome back to Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. Scott, before we get into, I want to go into some picks because I just want to see where you go with some of these on opening day. Talk to me about some of your biggest storylines heading into this season.
You asked me this right before we came on the show, and I told you I needed to think about it. I think the biggest storyline is going to be the baseball. Major League Baseball has changed the baseball just a little bit. They've loosened the strings on the baseball between the first and second string just like a third of a millimeter, which is reduce the buoyancy, the bounciness of the ball, just the slightest little bit, trying to decrease home runs, trying to change the game a little bit, make it more of a contact sport, not everybody trying to hit the ball out of the ballpark, trying to make more contact. And it seems to have worked a little bit. In spring training, home runs were down, runs scored were up. So it's going to be really interesting to see if that trend stays, if the home runs are down a little bit, if we see more doubles and triples, balls in the gap, more action, more contact, because guys realize that every little fly ball is not going to leave the ballpark now. So I think that's going to be probably the biggest thing to watch.
My biggest storyline is basically the top of the NL West. You know, we all have an idea of what it's going to be, and you've heard it on this show, but it's going to be a fun ride all season to watch those games, Scott, between the Dodgers and Padres.
It should be. It should be. But, you know, like we've talked about a bunch of times this week, you know, on paper it should be really good, but that's why they play the game. So we'll see how things break down when they actually start playing.
The Washington Nationals had a couple of COVID cases, actually a COVID case, and three other personnel had to be quarantined because of contact tracing. But the games will go tomorrow night, and that's going to be a fun game to watch. We'll get to that in a second. Scott, was this your worry in spring training?
A little bit, although, you know, the Cardinals all got their COVID shots. I think all the teams are getting their players all the shots. So hopefully within the next week or so, you know, it won't be a concern anymore. And hopefully this is just a one player and it doesn't, you know, nobody else has a positive test and it's not a big deal. And then everybody gets these shots and it's not something we have to worry about anymore.
I'll save the picks for a little bit longer. Scott, do you what other things that you want to talk about or give light to before the season starts?
I mean, there's a lot of things you could look at. There's some, like you said, there's some really good teams. There's some really good young players to watch. You know, I'm excited to see guys like, you know, I'm excited to see what Dylan Carlson does. You know, a guy who's considered one of the front runners for Rookie of the Year in the National League with the guy that we talked about in Pittsburgh, Bryant Hayes. I'm anxious to see what those young guys do. I'm anxious to see what a team like the Angels do with Joe Madden as their manager. I don't like their pitching. I don't think they're going to be very good, but some of the national pundits are really high on the Angels, so I'm interested to see if Joe Madden is able to find a way to turn that team around. I mean, they've got all the talent in the world in the lineup, but their pitching has a lot of room to have questions. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. The Yankees. Can Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton stay healthy all year? Can Corey Kluber stay healthy all year? Can Garrett Cole be a little bit better than he was last year? Can that team – Luke Voigt's going to miss some time. Can that team run away with the American League East? The White Sox, Tony La Russa coming back. There's another one that's going to be really exciting to watch. I'm really anxious. I think Tony's going to have an amazing year with that team. But, yeah, those are some of the top things I'm looking forward to seeing. What about you?
Those are some of the things that I'm looking forward to also. I'm also looking forward to what the Rays do as an encore this year. Losing the guys they did. We talked about it earlier on the show, and the Tampa Bay Rays, no matter what their roster looks like, they always seem to be that diamond in the rough. You always see or find that diamond in the rough. You can always see that there's somebody coming out of Tampa that, you know, comes out of nowhere.
That is true, and I heard today that they've at least had some early negotiations about an extension with Randy Arozarena already. I don't know that I would do that just based on what he did in October, but apparently the Rays are considering an extension, so we'll see how that plays out.
Wow. Scott, you always told me you told me during the playoff run, you're like, Joe, don't overrate this guy. Don't get too excited. Don't say the Cardinals should have done this, done that. And I have to agree with you, Scott. This is a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction. Now, on the Francisco Lindor front, you don't think a deal gets done, do you?
You know, the clock is ticking. The clock is definitely ticking. They don't play till tomorrow night. So they still have, 22 hours, but Frankie said that if it's not done by opening day, that he wasn't negotiating until the end of the season. So I'm kind of doubting that it does. I have a feeling Francisco Lindor is going to test free agency.
And that will be one hell of a free agent class. Scott, let's start with Yankees and Blue Jays. What are you looking for on opening day from both these teams?
From the Yankees, you're going to throw Garrett Cole out there, looking to see how he looks on opening day, and then what that Yankee lineup looks like. I mean, they've got the Masters, like we talked about. Luke Voigt is missing the first part of the season with an injury, but how does Stanton and Judge look? Aaron Hicks is back. Does that Yankee lineup take off from the very beginning? And then from the Toronto point of view, they've got a lot of injuries in Toronto. George Springer is going to miss quite a bit of time. It sounds like he's got a grade 2 oblique injury. Those oblique injuries can linger. I mean, it could be a while before he makes his Toronto debut. Robbie Ray, one of the pitchers they're counting on, has elbow issues, so not sure exactly when he's going to pitch. Kirby Yates, the closer they went and got, is down for the year. Toronto's got a lot of questions, and let's see how the fans react to the Florida Blue Jays, because that's where they're playing their home games.
Toronto and New York, who do you got in this one?
I'm going Yankees.
Yankees? Close game?
I don't think so.
All right. Cleveland and Detroit. This is a good team versus a bad team, but a team that is building towards something. These have always been good games in the past. What are you seeing, Scott?
I think Cleveland wins this game.
I think Cleveland wins this game as well. How about Baltimore and Boston? I think this could be another blowout too, but then again, Boston's not that great either. So how do you see that game playing out?
Neither team have really good pitching. Like we talked about the other night, the Red Sox rotation is pretty much decimated with injury. I would give Boston the nod, but that could be a high-scoring ball game.
Minnesota Twins and Milwaukee Brewers. You got Kenta Maeda and Brandon Woodruff in this one. This could be a very good opening game for both teams.
I am going Cleveland.
You mean I said Minnesota and Milwaukee.
Oh, you said Cleveland. Okay, Minnesota.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry.
Who do you have?
You know what? I'm gonna go Milwaukee, man. I hate to do it because they're in the same division as our Redbirds, but I can't go against Brandon Woodruff, and it's at home in Milwaukee. So I know it's not much of a home field advantage, but you are getting fans back this year. So okay. I'm gonna go Milwaukee. Pittsburgh and Chicago.
Chicago.
Atlanta, Philadelphia. I got Chicago as well. Sorry.
Yeah, Braves and Phillies. I'm assuming Max Fried's pitching for Atlanta. It's probably Fried and
Nola.
Where's it at?
It's in Philadelphia.
I'm gonna go Phillies.
You're gonna go Phillies, huh?
Yep.
I'm gonna go Atlanta. I'm gonna say Philly starts 0-1. So,
okay.
Texas Rangers at Kansas City Royals. You got Kyle Gibson and Brad Keller.
Kansas City.
And you're going against our friend in Kyle Gibson. Wow.
I am. The Royals are just a better team. I think Kyle will pitch okay, but the Royals are a better team than the Rangers are at this point.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I'll go Kansas City as well. You have the Cardinals at Cincinnati Reds. Do we want to do this one since we're always going to do the same thing?
Yeah, might as well. I'm taking the Cardinals.
I'm taking the Cardinals too. Bonus: how long does Jack Flaherty pitch?
I'm going to say 6 innings.
I'm going to go 7. Going to say go 7 innings tomorrow. Is dominant all day. Arizona and San Diego. This is in San Diego. You got Bumgarner versus Darvish.
Here's my shocker of the day. Mad Bum pitches well. The Diamondbacks beat the Padres. Padres start 0-1.
Wow. I mean, hey, it's not that much of a shocker. I've seen things like that in the past where there's so much anticipation and there's a letdown in the first game. That's for sure. This game shouldn't be hard to pick at all. Los Angeles Dodgers and Colorado Rockies.
Who's pitching for the Rockies?
Herman Marquez.
Yeah. Kershaw pitching for the Dodgers, I assume?
Yes.
I'll go Dodgers.
I'll go Dodgers as well. Are you shocked Kershaw is getting this start, not Walker Buehler?
No, Clayton Kershaw is still the ace of that team, even with Trevor Bauer there.
Okay. Rays at Marlins.
Sandy Alcantara's pitching for the Marlins. I'm going to go Marlins.
I'll go Marlins as well. I like Tyler Glasnow, but he seems to play around with guys too much on the mound. So yeah, I'm gonna go Sandy Alcantara and the Miami Marlins. New York Mets, Washington Nationals. Game of the night, really.
I'm going Nationals. Scherzer pitches well. It's Scherzer and DeGrom. That'll be a great game, but I'm going Nationals.
That will be a great game. I got the Nationals as well. I think Scherzer pitches 7 innings, allowing 1 run and striking out like 10. So I know I haven't done it for a lot of pitchers, but that's Max Scherzer, man. You want to talk about future Hall of Famer? There he is. Chicago White Sox and Los Angeles Angels.
White Sox.
White Sox as well. Houston and Oakland.
Oakland.
This is Oakland. Okay, I got Oakland as well. San Francisco Giants at Seattle Mariners. This is Gausman versus Gonzalez.
I'm going to go with the old Cardinal. I'm going to say Marco pitches really well, and Seattle beats the Giants 2-1.
I'm going to say the same thing. I'm going to go 3-1 Seattle. I'm going to go 3-1 Seattle. So there are our picks for tomorrow. We could be totally wrong on this, but at least we're putting them out there. Scott, do you have anything before we get out of here tonight?
Nope, just excited for baseball to start tomorrow. It's going to be fun. Can't wait to see Jack Flaherty on the mound. Can't wait to see Nolan Arenado in that Cardinal uniform in the lineup. First inning. It's going to be fun, man. Can't wait for baseball to start.
One question on the Cardinal lineup. Would you do Goldschmidt, Arenado 2 and 3?
Me personally, no. I would have honestly, and I think at some point before the season's over, it'll be this way. I think the ideal lineup: Dylan Carlson's your 2-hitter, and then Goldie and Arenado.
I think Goldie and Arenado should be in that 3-4 hole. Your second hole hitter should be one of your table setters. Not saying Arenado isn't, but he should be cleaning the table, not setting up. So I don't know.
Do you agree with me? Dylan Carlson will be the number 2 hitter before the season's over?
I do. Well, thank you guys for watching tonight. For Scott Tobin, I'm Joe Hamilton. Do your best to do everything the right way so we can go back to Busch Stadium and watch these Cardinals play, because it's in full capacity, because this team's going to be fun, ladies and gentlemen. Again, for Scott Tobin, I'm Joe Hamilton. See you guys after opening day. We'll get our reactions right here on Crunch Time.